Welcome to The Line. One of the top news stories in the past week was the resignation of Albuquerque School Board member Annalee Maestas. State officials are investigating alleged embezzlement by her daughter at a charter school funded by Ms. Maestas. And I'm also going to ask these Line panelists to react to a new report that criticizes spending in school districts across our state. I'm joined at the table this week by attorney Sophie Martin. Former New Mexico House Minority Whip Daniel Foley is here. Giovanna Rossi, she is president of Collective Action Strategies LLC and producer and host of the Well Woman Show. Love that show. And attorney Mary T. Torres is here. Now, so starting us off here, Annalee Maestas previously said she would not step down the board if her daughter did embezzle these funds, but she has now. My first question is, it seems like this could have been a lot uglier. We've gotten to at least some kind of elegant point where something's moving here. Did she get a bit of a break by not getting indictments and arrested and all this other stuff beforehand, you know?
No, I mean, before she stepped down, certainly it doesn't appear that that has happened. But
Right.
we don't know what's to come.
That's right.
We don't see, for instance, as far as I know, a promise from the state that they're not going to move forward on investigation and prosecution. In fact, my sense is that they are still investigating the situation. So really what she gets is an opportunity to step out of the public eye for a little while and probably work with her attorneys to try and figure out what to do.
One of the things that's come up, Giovanna, is restitution, and we're talking about $700 large. That's a lot of money taken over the course of some years. And not to be flip about it, but when you're talking about addiction and an addict, that's not money squired away in, you know, some Paul Manafort-like account overseas. This is gone. It's gone money. How does the state and the school get restitution in situations like this? It's very difficult, it would seem to me.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, I don't have an answer for what that would be.
Sure.
I think that we have to wait and see. As Sophie was saying, there's so much more to come. We don't know, what the process is going to be. I think there's a lot more to come, and there's very little to go on, as it is right now.
I think too. I mean, to this point, Maestas is the one who says that it's gone to her daughter's drug addiction.
Right.
I have to believe that Hector Balderas' office is testing that idea, is looking at, did that really happen, or what really happened here? So, it's kind of a tough thing. We see, this is true of so many stories, we see information in the news, and we may interpret it in our own way. We're applying kind of like, do we think this is a reliable person or not? But ultimately, this is potentially a defendant putting out their information. And
That's right.
It has to be investigated.
Thank you for bringing it to that level. That's actually a good point. That's where our auditor is at. That's certainly.
Sure.
Daniel, the idea that Ms. Maestas was not the perpetrator here, it was her daughter. And so there's a question about how much accountability she must have for her daughter's actions. And this is where it gets kind of squirrely, doesn't it? It's a tricky thing because we haven't heard word one about her daughter. Who she is, what's happening, what's going on, where she is. And I suppose Sophie's right, this is all going to come out in the investigation. But my point of being, it's her daughter that's the perpetrator here. How accountable should Ms. Maestas be for someone else's action?
Well, I think the daughter, for your question about her being held accountable, the daughter relationship is irrelevant in my opinion. Okay. She was the captain of the ship. She started this charter school. She's the one that signs the paperwork. Right. She was the one that was in charge. I think,
and assuming signing off on these checks as well.
Right, or whomever was. Like we talked about at the table before, when I was on the board of the charter school I was on, I don't know how that money disappears. We knew where every penny was going. It was it was hard enough to keep the doors open and the lights going.
That's right.
So that's a significant amount of money. I think in any organization, when you're the person in charge, the buck stops here.
Okay.
I think the sad part, and I think that it adds to the frustration of people, is that now you have a family member involved. So where there are different controls in place for non-family member employees than for family members, I don't know. I think the sad part is that this has taken this long to ferret itself out in the public domain, and we really have someone who's got a problem, and that's a daughter with a disorder.
Do us a favor. Let's take advantage of your being here at this table as a former member of a charter school board. Any guesses how one could actually slip $700,000 by an entire board governance system? I mean, it
Yeah,
can't be
that means
just
you
the
don't
head
have
of
a
the
board governance system.
It's also over a number of years, right?
Over 6
Yes,
years.
over 6 years,
Over 6
right.
years, you can do, you know, say
100,000 a year.
100,000 a year,
I'm telling you,
a
we
few thousand a month.
knew where $500 was every month. We had no choice in the charter
Yeah,
school.
no question that they should
these
know where
schools
to.
are not. These schools are not flush with cash.
Right.
That they're sitting with $200,000 in the bank and $5,000 gone. You're like, nah, it's an accounting error. I mean, it was, as we've said here before. Thank God Cottonwood Classic has turned out to become a fantastic school. They're doing a phenomenal job. But there was a lot of time there where. It was, can you pay the rent? Can you keep the lights on? Teachers giving up things to help keep the school open. So I think that, when you have a governing council, when you have a person running it, I think it's just muddied by the fact that it was her daughter.
Right.
So I think the question is going to be is when did she know?
Right.
And what was done.
That's right.
But I think at the end of the day, the sad part still is it's just another example of the mental health and addiction problems we have in New Mexico, and we're going to get to watch this unfold in the
Right.
public domain, and I don't think it's going to help that young girl anyway.
Mary, it was just a brilliant transition. I was just about to ask, there's lots of different ways that folks who are struggling with addiction can hide lots of things,
Right.
but they do need enabling sometimes. And that could be a tricky thing. We don't want to throw Ms. Maestas under the bus for her daughter sitting
Right.
here. But I just have to think, if you're going to be able to clean 500,000 to 700,000,
Right.
you have to have a little bit of help, or at least someone blocking. Do you see what I mean? Looking too closely at the books. Again, it's hard to prejudge these things.
Right, we
but-
don't
Right.
have all the facts, but
That's right.
But Ms. Maestas, the mom, and Annalee Maestas, she was executive director. She should have known. The buck does stop at her desk, and
That's right.
to have all of that does seem like that's really an issue. But we just don't know. And to really address your enabling question,
That's right.
if she did know and she was hiding and she was trying to hide that, really bad on her, and is that why she's resigned? But we don't know.
But we
just
don't know because this happens, Sophie, that sometimes when you've got a family situation, the instinct is to protect that family member no matter how bad a situation
Well, one of the
it
things
is.
that I wonder, and we've had a number of situations in government here in New Mexico in which somebody who has responsibility over financial matters embezzles money. I mean, I can remember stories of people buying sports cars and all that sort of stuff. And the chief executive in that organization doesn't necessarily get axed as well.
Right.
I mean, we usually are just focusing on the person who bought the Ferrari or
Right.
who did whatever. I think that the danger, again, with all the facts not being out, but the danger is when you hire a family member, I think you do take on an additional level of responsibility.
Right.
Because it is unusual. There are different sort of relationship dynamics that happen there. And we're seeing it here. Now there is this issue of the carpet cleaning, which
That
Right.
$340.
it's
Yeah.
small, but it
Right.
looks not great.
Right.
And that's specifically tied to the director. But
Can you clarify that just a bit more, just for folks who catch up on that story?
yeah.
That there was,
So my understanding is that there was a reimbursement for carpet cleaning that happened in the older Miss Maestas' home.
right.
And that was billed to the school as if it had happened at the school.
Right.
And so that certainly seems to tie her in a way that might not have.
One of the
And
things,
manipulating some money and hiding money
one of the things
somehow.
that's one of the things that's important that's going to come out during this process too is, the state just doesn't hand a charter school a bunch of money and you just kind of operate. I mean, you have the Department of Finance that comes and audits you annually. You have the Public Education Department. I'm sure they had to have had. I know that we had to go out and find, when I was in the charter school, we had to find a CPA firm that we had to pay to do our statements to send to the Department of Public Education.
Right.
And I could tell you that they came back and when I was on the board, our CPAs came back and said, okay, we need to know exactly what this lunch reception thing was
Right.
for. I mean, you
That's
guys need to, not that they cared, they were just like, that's gonna get asked.
test
And so
it.
you
Right.
need to,
Right.
and so, I mean, I think you're gonna find out that not only did this happen, but there's going to be, I don't think it could have been pulled off by one person. I think, like you're saying, whether someone was like, look, there's this problem, and whether she was going to people involved and saying, look, it's my daughter, I need some time, I need some help.
Right.
But this is going to track all the way back to the State Department of Education, because I could tell you they were constantly up in our business when we were doing
Sure,
stuff financially.
as they should.
And,
Sure.
and right, and so for this to have gone on this long
Right.
before someone finds it is kind of surprising.
Yeah, and I think it also goes to the idea that we can't just blame one person in a situation, right? We have to assume that, everybody involved has the best intentions. They're there to, help us, build a school, educate kids. They're all there for a really good reason. There's more than one person in the situation, and so the young woman who's drug addicted, if that's the case, the board member who was the executive director and founder of the school, but there are more players in the game, right? There's PED, there's the board of directors, and this
Right.
goes
You
to
have
the
to think.
question of
That's right.
there are lots of board members in this state of all kinds of things that don't know how to read a financial statement.
That's right.
And that's their job every month,
That's right.
right? So where were they?
Mary,
So
where
I
does
think
this-
we
where
need
does
to
this
look at
leave-
everybody.
Exactly. Sorry, Giovanna, my fault. Where does this leave the board? You know what I mean? It's kind of a
Exactly.
tricky thing for them right now.
And we don't know what the status is of the investigation. We don't know what kind of financials they were given. But if we follow what Dan says normally happens, one would think they would have been looking at those financials and would have approved them. But again, if the daughter is the head finance person, who knows what reports she would have been giving, giving the board.
right.
So who knows? But the board may very well have some liability too, right?
Exactly right. Speak to that, Sophie, if you would as well. Again, this gets to Giovanna's point. These things only start expanding once you start lifting the layers. It just starts going like this.
Sure. I mean, one of the things actually that I've been thinking about as we've been having this conversation is the audits. The auditors, typically in their management letters, they will say, we're doing this based on the information you gave us. We're testing to see whether your procedures are particularly vulnerable to fraud. We're testing to see were those procedures that you've put in place where they followed. But they're always going to be relying on data that's been provided by the client.
Right.
And typically auditors do sort of say and if this is all bogus, that is very much on you. That is very much on you. So I mean, to Mary's point, we there's a lot of we don't know at this table, but
That's right.
I think the big caution is let's see. Let's
That's
wait
right.
and see what the investigation
And in
brings
addition,
out.
of course, we throw in our prayers to the Maestas family. This is a
Exactly.
difficult situation for them. I mean, you've got
Definitely.
someone with addiction problems. Some compassion is part of our deal as well. Now, when we come back to the line, we'll discuss the finalists in the search for a new president at the University of New Mexico.